In the newspaper industry and television industry 20 years ago, success was a return of 20 or 30%. Today, success might be a return of 8 or 10%, which is still better than most businesses, but for those people that are used to very successful media businesses, it's not quite the same. So what they're having to do today is work harder, get money from more places than they did before. And this is uncomfortable for many people in media, particularly in the news parts of media. What is happening is that because they're not making very much money, they think they have to chase audience. So they chase the audience that's not interested in the serious by giving less serious news, by concentrating on what celebrities are doing, and by concentrating on sports and other things. And it reduces the quality of the serious news coverage because they're having to put people to work on these other things. Part of it is a problem of strategy, is that there is still this expectation that everybody's supposed to come to us and listen to what we have to say. Well, no, not everybody's supposed to. Not everybody wants to. And what you want is the people that want serious, good discussion of society and politics and events in the world. That's the people that you want if you're a news site. But many of the news sites are trying these other things and it's not working for them. And that is very, very clear that it is not bringing in money, it's not bringing in audiences. What you end up having to do is find a way to get those people that are really interested to start paying you and making the money that way. It's a much better audience, but it's an audience that a lot of journalists particularly don't know how to relate to because they've never done that before, and they don't understand that the relationship has now changed and they can't deal with the audience the same way they did 50 years ago when it was very anonymous. It's no longer anonymous. Paywalls are working for some publishers. And some are doing very well, and that's helpful. In others, they're using memberships or they're using other ways to get donations and crowdfunding and various other sources of funding from the audience. But in the end, somebody's got to pay for this if you're going to have it. And the way you structure it, whether it be a paywall or a soft paywall, or whether it be getting crowdfunding or gifts or grants or whatever, you have to find those ways that work for you, for each individual provider. It will be different for different providers. We know for online, for digital media, for news in digital spaces, maybe up to 15% of people will pay, perhaps 20 or 25 in a few years, but not much more than that, because more than that don't want news on a regular basis. They will pay for entertainment. They're happy to pay for movies. They're happy to pay for television programs. They will pay for that. We know will pay for that. But for news and information is really where the critical issue comes. So essentially, who's going to pay are those people that really want the news are going to start paying for the news, as they always have. But those that didn't aren't going to pay for news, and that's going to be a problem for getting high profits in the industry. So the newspapers are getting smaller and smaller. They're getting less advertising, and they're getting less because they're getting less readers. In the digital world, the same thing is happening, as we're all going to different places. If we're interested in entertainment and celebrities, there are entertainment and celebrity sites you go to. If you're interested in food, there are food sites. And so these kind of general sites are not surviving very well. And news sites are only attracting those people most interested in the news. Well, that's the key, is if you can find it out there for free, why pay for it? I wouldn't pay for it if I could find it for free. Journalists have a problem in that they think journalism is important, and it is important, but it's really important to journalists. And they forget that for everybody else out there, they live lives, and they just want to go on with their lives, and they want to know, is there something happening I should be aware of? And they can get that for free. They can get it from television news, they can get it from digital news, they can get it from social media, they can get it in many different parts. And they don't want to read every day. When something happens, then they go and read, or they go watch the news, and then they'll buy the paper for the day and get it. But for most of the time, they're not going to do that, and that's okay. But we still, if you really love news, you're going to have the specialty ones that you want, and those you're going to end up paying for if you're not paying for them already. It used to be 25 years ago that when you looked at the marketing expenditures, about 75% of all marketing expenditure was for advertising. Today, it's only about 25% of all. So they're putting it into promotions, sponsorships, direct sales, all kinds of things that they didn't do before, because it's much more effective for them to reach out to people that are doing that. Now, newspapers have one advantage, though, that's left, and it's one they're not using very well yet, and that is that those people who still read newspapers, and in most places it's about 20 to about 35% of the population still buy newspapers. Those tend to be people that are economically, politically, and socially active in the community. They're the real doers and the thinkers and the people that run businesses, and they're people active in the community in various ways, the community organizers, all of these people. It's not always wealthy people, but it's influential people. For many advertisers to reach really influential people, it can be very, very useful. And so it's a better audience, it's a quality audience by comparison to the audience for other kinds of media, which is a more generalized kind of audience. So at some point, I think newspapers should start realizing we have a very special, unique audience here rather than the general audience, because they've spent 100 years now selling a general audience. We have to start thinking in this digital world and in the new world of the way people read the press of we're a specialized audience, not a generalized audience. Then we can make strategies of how to work with. But it's not going to bring back all the advertising that went away to other places, but it will bring a better price for the ones that want to be there. I always find it very interesting that if you talk to newspaper people, they want to give gifts if you'll buy a new subscription, but they'll never give a gift to somebody that's been a subscriber for 25 years. But that's your most important client, but they don't. The relationship is still not understood. That this shift in where money comes from means you have to treat those people as well as you used to treat the advertisers. And they used to have special events for advertisers and parties and everything else for them because they wanted to keep them happy. But they don't do that for the readers. And that will not continue. They've got to change the way they approach the readers. It's a change. It's a new world. It was the same world that we went through 200 years ago when people could publish anything on a piece of paper and pass it around. And some people say, oh, it's printed, it must be important. Well, that's what people now are doing on the internet. Now they're starting to realize, well, just because it's in there doesn't make it true. And so now they're trying to find ways to, how do I reduce that? Things that aren't true. What they're having to do now is teach people the differences between different qualities of news, teach people what fake news is, teach people what bad news is, teach people what good news is and what good quality journalism is. And to do that, there will be a literacy issue of teaching people how to make those decisions. But I think also that serious news organizations will soon start indicating that we subscribe to certain principles. And I don't know if it will be a trademark of some sort or something that will say, this was produced with these principles involved. If you have a very good brand and people respect and trust you, it is because you've proved over time that you are pretty accurate. people have to be reminded of this, and especially in a world where there are tens of thousands of sources now available, you have to be reminded that this is a very credible source, and so you have to tell them that, and you have to tell them why it's credible, and over time they will understand that. The other thing is that people need to learn when they're getting their social media feeds to look at where is it coming from, and is this a very credible one, or is it less than credible?